If you stay quiet, I'll let you live," the assassin whispered to the hotel maid. She smiled and said 4 words that changed everything. "I don't think so." Before we continue, like, subscribe, and please comment on which country you're watching from. The night sky over Chicago pressed against the windows of Apex Grand Hotel like a sheet of dark velvet. Rain drummed steadily against the 50-story tower that dominated the magnificent mile, its marble lobby glowing with the kind of oppressive elegance that made wealth feel like religion. Inside, tech executives in custom suits glided through polished corridors, their designer shoes clicking across floors that cost more per square foot than most people earned in a year. But in the shadows near the service elevator, invisible to every person who mattered, Kendra Washington pushed her cleaning cart across the gleaming marble. Her uniform was standard issue, burgundy polo shirt, white name badge that nobody ever read, non-slip shoes that squeaked softly with each step. Her dark skin seemed to blend into the background of their awareness, not because of any physical property, but because of something more insidious. To the wealthy guests of Apex Grand, she simply didn't exist. No one met her eyes. No one ever did. To them, she was ambient noise, the woman who emptied wastebaskets, restocked amenities, and vanished before the morning light revealed the mechanisms that kept their world spotless. She had perfected the art of invisibility over 6 years of night shifts, learning to move through spaces like smoke, present but unnoticed, essential but unacknowledged. At 9:17 p.m., the glass entrance doors whispered open. A convoy of black Escalades pulled up to the curved driveway like sharks closing in on prey. 6 men stepped out, their movements synchronized with military precision. Expensive suits, polished shoes, the kind of grooming that suggested serious money. But their eyes, cold, calculating, methodical, told a different story. These weren't tourists. They were predators. Kendra's instincts flared. Years of training buried under years of silence stirred awake in her bloodstream like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. Her hand tightened imperceptibly on the handle of her mop bucket. The tallest man led the formation. Dmitry Volkov, Eastern European features, close-cropped hair the color of gunmetal, eyes like chips of Arctic ice. The kind of man who never smiled because emotion was a weakness he'd eliminated from his operating system. He scanned the lobby once, cataloging exits, camera positions, security personnel, potential complications. Then his gaze landed on her. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. Kendra felt the weight of his assessment, calculating, dismissing, categorizing her as irrelevant. She dropped her gaze immediately, resuming the posture of subservience that had become her camouflage. "Keep moving," she whispered to herself, her Chicago accent softened by years of making herself smaller. "Just keep moving." Across the lobby, Jonathan Pierce stood checking messages on his phone beside the private elevator bank. The tech billionaire and founder of CipherStream Technologies looked tired, the blue glow from his screen painting shadows under his eyes. He was here for a late-night meeting with venture capitalists interested in his revolutionary blockchain security platform, a meeting that would never happen. He didn't know that every man who had just entered the building carried death under their tailored jackets. Dmitry moved first. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Mr. Pierce." As Jonathan looked up, the suppressed pistol appeared in Dmitry's hand like a magic trick performed by the devil himself. "Tonight," Dmitry said with the casualness of someone ordering coffee, "you're going to die." Time fractured into slow motion. The security guard near the concierge desk didn't even have time to reach for his radio. The air suddenly smelled of ozone and brass and something darker, the metallic tang of imminent violence. Kendra froze beside her cart, her brain splitting into 2 distinct voices. The civilian half screaming, "Run. Get out. This isn't your fight." The soldier half whispering with cold precision, "Assess. Plan. Execute." Dmitry stepped closer to Jonathan, the suppressor aimed at the billionaire's forehead with surgical precision. "Step away from the elevator. Hands where I can see them. No sudden movements, or this ends messier than it needs to." Jonathan's voice came out steadier than expected. "Whatever you're being paid, I can triple it. Name your price. Dimitri's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a human face. Your death is worth more than your life, Mr. Pierce. The people who want you gone have already calculated the mathematics. Then his eyes flicked toward Kendra like a hawk noticing a mouse. You, he said, motioning with the gun. Cleaning woman. Kendra's heart hammered against her ribs, but her breathing remained controlled. The entire lobby had become an echo chamber, every breath amplified, every second stretching like taffy. You see what's happening here? Dimitri asked, tapping the suppressor against his own temple. You understand the situation. Kendra said nothing. Every muscle in her body coiled with readiness, disguised as fear. Walk away, Dimitri continued, his voice dropping to winter steel. Keep that mouth shut and those eyes down, or I'll put a bullet through your worthless skull. One of his men, a wiry operative with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, snickered. Think she even speaks English? Dimitri didn't glance at him. These people always understand enough. Fear translates universally. He turned back to Kendra, dismissing her with his tone. Stay invisible like a good little nobody. That's what you people do best, isn't it? The insult landed with surgical precision, designed to humiliate, to reinforce her supposed inferiority, to remind her that in their world, she was less than human. Kendra's jaw tightened. Her hands, rough and calloused from years of scrubbing tile and hauling industrial cleaning equipment, gripped a mop handle until her knuckles went pale. Breathe, she told herself. Not yet. Not yet. The men repositioned, forming a tactical perimeter around Jonathan. Their movements were too smooth, too practiced. Not street thugs. Not amateurs. These were operators, mercenaries, soldiers, professionals who'd done this before and expected to walk away clean. The only sound was the hum of the lobby's ambient lighting and the soft squeak of Kendra's cart as she began backing away, slow and measured. Her eyes flicked to the reflective glass wall beside the elevators. In it, she saw her own reflection framed against theirs, her burgundy uniform against their charcoal suits, her cleaning cart against their weapons, her black face against their white assumptions. Invisible versus invincible. At least, that's what they thought. Dimitri waved her off with a lazy gesture. Go. Disappear. Before I decide you're a liability. Kendra pushed her cart toward the service corridor, every muscle screaming to move faster. But her heartbeat was slowing instead, dropping into the combat rhythm she'd learned a lifetime ago. She could feel it happening, the shift. The air tasted different now. The geometry of the room rearranged itself in her mind into angles, distances, cover points, fields of fire. She turned the corner, disappearing into the dim hallway that led to the supply elevators. Her reflection vanished from the lobby glass like a ghost fading at dawn. Behind her, Dimitri cocked his head slightly. She's gone, he muttered in Russian to his team. Good. One less complication. He had no idea what he'd just allowed to escape. Kendra reached the end of the corridor and leaned against the wall, chest rising and falling in controlled breaths. Her pulse drummed in her ears, but her hands were rock steady. She opened the maintenance closet and slipped inside, the small space smelling of industrial bleach and metal polish. Her cart remained parked outside, but she still wore the utility belt she always kept, duct tape, screwdriver, flashlight, box cutter, multi-tool. Simple items that in the right hands became instruments of precision violence. She closed her eyes for one long second. Images came flooding back like ghosts rising from graves she tried to keep sealed. Dust storms over Kandahar, the ringing in her ears after IED explosions, the voice of her late husband, Tyrell, handing her that polished challenge coined the day she graduated from Army Ranger selection. Stay strong, Kendra. Always strong. Her hand brushed the coin now, smooth from years of carrying it in her pocket. It was warm against her palm, as if Tyrell's spirit still lived in the metal. Always, she whispered. Outside, the rain intensified, hammering against the tall windows of Apex Grand Hotel like the city itself was trying to warn her about what was coming. 6 armed men. 1 target. Dozens of civilians who had no idea they were standing in a kill zone. She could call the police. But she'd overheard enough to know the plan was airtight. Delayed response. Cameras looped. Security diverted. Backup routes blocked. They'd built a perfect trap. Except for one variable they hadn't accounted for. The cleaning woman who wasn't just a cleaning woman. Kendra straightened, her dark eyes hardening into something that looked like tempered steel. In the small mirror above the utility sink, her reflection no longer looked tired. It looked ready. Back in the lobby, Dmitri checked his watch. 9:19 p.m. Right on schedule. He nodded to his team, communicating through practiced hand signals. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Security guards had already been diverted by false alarms. The lobby felt empty, sterile, except for the quiet hum of approaching death. Kendra stepped into the freight elevator, pressed the button for the mezzanine level, and whispered to the empty car, "Let's see if Invisible can still fight." The elevator door slid shut with a metallic hiss, sealing her into darkness. Outside, lightning flashed across Apex Grand's mirrored facade. Inside, death was taking its position. And somewhere between the two, a forgotten black woman was about to remind the world that invisibility was a choice, not a destiny. The freight elevator hummed softly as it climbed, each floor number blinking past like a countdown to something inevitable. Kendra closed her eyes, and for a moment, the mechanical rhythm sounded too much like helicopter rotors. Just like that, the past bled through. 14 years earlier, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. The heat had been murderous that day, dry and abrasive, the kind that turned your lungs into sandpaper. Staff Sergeant Kendra Washington crouched behind a mud-brick compound wall, radio pressed to her ear, sweat cutting rivers through the dust caked on her dark skin. Eagle 6, this is Viper 2. Package secured. Requesting immediate dust-off. Over. Gunfire crackled in the distance. 3 sharp reports, then ominous silence. Her husband, Specialist Tyrell Washington, had been providing overwatch from the ridgeline 200 meters north. He'd promised he'd cover her extraction. He always did. The explosion that followed had turned the horizon into a white sun that swallowed everything, sound, sight, hope. She remembered running through smoke and confusion, remembered the medevac helicopter, remembered later the military hospital in Germany, where they told her, in clinical language, that Specialist Tyrell Washington had been killed instantly. They gave her medals, commendations, a folded flag that now sat in a box in her tiny apartment. But when the ceremony lights dimmed and the cameras stopped flashing, nobody asked what happened to soldiers when the war ended, but the fighting never stopped. Present day. The elevator chimed softly. The doors opened onto the staff maintenance level, a narrow corridor smelling of machine oil and industrial cleaner. Kendra stepped out, the overhead fluorescents flickering like dying stars. She leaned against the wall for a moment, exhaling slowly. The past was a wound that never fully closed. It only learned to hide under long sleeves and forced smiles. After Tyrell's death, she'd been medically discharged, left to navigate civilian life with chronic pain from shrapnel wounds, nightmares that turned sleep into a battlefield, and a bank account that evaporated under medical bills. Her 2 daughters, Aaliyah and Destiny, had been toddlers then. The world didn't care that she'd once saved lives overseas. It only cared that she could mop floors on schedule and stay invisible. Apex Grand Hotel had been her second chance. Stable job, regular paycheck, health insurance for Destiny's asthma treatments. 6 years of anonymity had taught her how to survive by being unseen. She wore silence like armor and humility like camouflage. But tonight that armor was cracking. She entered the janitorial storage bay, her small kingdom of mops, industrial cleaners, and forgotten equipment. A faded photo of her daughters was taped inside her locker door, edges curled from moisture. Beneath it lay a small wooden box wrapped in an old army-issue bandana. Kendra hesitated before lifting the lid. Inside rested the relics of a life she no longer spoke of, a tactical folding knife with a blackened blade designed for silent work, a worn Ranger tab patch, the challenge coin Tyrell had given her, engraved with their unit motto, Rangers lead the way. Her thumb traced the raised letters like reading Braille in the dark. Faith, she murmured. Faith in something worth protecting. Focus, she said, pocketing the coin. Focus on what needed to be done. Fire, she breathed, her voice turning to steel. Fire only when there's no other choice. Kendra pulled off her burgundy work polo and replaced it with a black compression shirt she'd kept hidden under spare uniforms. Old habits died harder than soldiers. From the back of the locker, she retrieved a small tactical pouch. Zip ties, electrical tape, glass breaker, wire cutters, and a chemical accelerant she'd improvised from cleaning supplies. Basic, improvised, deadly in the right hands. Her reflection in the locker mirror looked unfamiliar now. No longer the quiet cleaning woman, but the ranger who used to clear rooms in 10 seconds flat. The woman who'd once led a 4-person fire team through enemy territory and brought everyone home alive except one. The building's HVAC system hummed, changing pitch. Kendra paused, listening. Through the ventilation ducts, she could hear radio static, muffled voices speaking in accented English and Russian. They were already moving into final positions. She checked her watch. 9:21 p.m. 3 minutes until they executed Jonathan Pierce. Kendra slung the tactical pouch across her body and moved fast down the maintenance corridor, feet silent on concrete. The fluorescent lights above buzzed like dying insects. She slipped through a side door and emerged into a service stairwell that spiraled down through the building skeleton. The sound of rain against glass became a dull roar. Her thoughts drifted, unbidden, to Jonathan Pierce, the man walking unknowingly into a kill box. She'd seen him dozens of times over the years. Unlike most guests, he was polite, said thank you to staff who never heard it from anyone else. Last spring, when Destiny's emergency room bill had threatened to bury them, a hospital administrator had called to say an anonymous benefactor had paid everything in full. Kendra had her suspicions. Jonathan had smiled at her differently the next day, kind, knowing, without words. Maybe that was why she couldn't walk away tonight. At the stairwell landing, she paused to catch her breath. The window looked out over Chicago's glittering sprawl, rivers of headlights threading between towers like veins of light in a body that never slept. People down there lived their lives, unaware that in one of those towers, death was being scheduled with military precision. Kendra wiped fog from the glass. Her reflection merged with the skyline, a ghost among the living. The elevator dinged somewhere below. Men's voices echoed faintly in Russian, moving to position Alpha, eyes on target route. They sounded calm, confident, professionals who thought the night was already theirs. Kendra closed her eyes, centering herself the way Tyrell had taught her before every mission. Slow breath, low pulse, sharp mind. Every instinct screamed danger, but beneath that was something purer, a quiet, burning resolve. She wasn't just protecting one man tonight. She was protecting the part of herself that still believed duty mattered. She reached the mezzanine door, her hand hovering over the handle. The distant echo of expensive shoes clicked across marble below. Jonathan Pierce had arrived. Kendra's heartbeat steadied, matching the rhythm of rain outside. This was it. The soldier inside her had woken up, and there was no putting her back to sleep. She adjusted her grip on the tactical pouch and whispered under her breath, "Tyrell, watch over me." The door creaked open, revealing the glow of chandeliers from the lobby far below. From this elevated position, she could see the predators taking their final positions. And for the first time in 6 years, Kendra Washington wasn't invisible anymore. From the mezzanine, Kendra watched the scene unfold with the detachment of a sniper, calculating, heart quiet, mind processing angles and probabilities. The lobby gleamed beneath her like an altar of glass and marble, chandeliers throwing constellations of light across polished floors. The killers moved through it like shadows performing deadly choreography. Dmitry Volkov was the center of gravity. Every movement, every gesture, every breath from his team orbited his command. 5 men in tailored suits, strategically positioned to form a perfect kill box. One by the revolving doors, one beside the fountain, one near the elevators, one watching the stairwell, one covering the mezzanine approach. Professional, disciplined, utterly unaware that death was watching them from above. Kendra crouched behind the mezzanine railing, her body aligned with the architecture. The black compression shirt blended with dark wood paneling, her movements measured to the rhythm of silence. Through vented panels below, she could see Dimitri glance at his watch. 9:22 p.m. 2 minutes. She unslung her tactical pouch, laying out what little she had. Electrical tape, zip ties, the tactical knife, a small bottle of chemical accelerant she could ignite into smoke, and a metal rod she detached from an equipment rack earlier. Improvised weapons born of necessity, the kind only a soldier who'd mopped these floors for 6 years would know how to make lethal. Her breathing slowed to one breath every 3 seconds. She had no backup, no radio, no armor, only training, instinct, and purpose. Below, Dimitri's voice broke the stillness. Positions confirmed. We execute clean. No noise. No mistakes. His accent carried the ice of Eastern Europe, clipped, precise, emotionless. The others murmured acknowledgement. One of them, the lean man by the fountain, was assembling a suppressor with calm efficiency. Another checked a wrist-mounted communication device. Kendra's eyes traced the geometry of their positioning, angles, lines of fire, blind spots, escape routes. She could already see where they'd shoot, how the bullets would travel, where blood would pool on that pristine marble. Every mission begins with a map Tyrell used to tell her. Even when the map is just inside your head. Her phone buzzed faintly in her pocket, a security app she configured years ago to monitor building systems. Now it showed something alarming. All camera feeds were looping 5-minute cycles. They'd hacked the surveillance grid. Smart, but not perfect. The loop didn't include the mezzanine maintenance cameras. She still had eyes where they didn't. A flash of motion caught her attention. Dimitri adjusted his cuff, revealing a thin scar running down his wrist, a mark she recognized instantly. She'd seen that exact scar pattern once in Kandahar. Back then, he'd been known by a different name. White Wolf, a mercenary who hunted NATO informants and aid workers. There were rumors he'd executed an entire village in Kinner province just to erase evidence of war crimes. Kendra had never crossed paths with him directly, but she'd read his classified file during a briefing. It had made her skin crawl. Below, the revolving doors whispered open. Jonathan Pierce stepped into the lobby, gray suit with rain-darkened shoulders, phone in hand, completely unaware. Kendra's pulse steadied. It's time. Dimitri turned, his predator's smile appearing. Mr. Pierce, he said, stepping forward as his team subtly closed the trap. Kendra's hands moved without hesitation. She ripped duct tape into short strips, wrapped them around the metal rod's base to form a grip. The tactical knife she wedged under the elastic of her waistband. She mixed 2 chemical compounds into a small spray bottle, instant smoke generator with a 30-second delay. Below, the dialogue continued, voices echoing faintly through the cavernous space. You possess information that threatens very powerful interests, Dimitri said smoothly. They send their regards and their regrets. Jonathan frowned. If this is about my congressional testimony, you're wasting your time. The evidence is already submitted. Evidence, Dimitri repeated almost kindly. Such a fragile concept. Kendra slid open a ventilation panel, lowering herself into position directly above the fountain. Her mind switched into mission cadence, breath, muscle, precision. 2 minutes of chaos, she thought. That's all I need to create an opening. Her heart wasn't racing. It was slowing. Every motion now was an echo of years spent in combat zones where hesitation meant death. She counted them silently. 6 enemies. 5 armed. 1 command element. Primary target, Jonathan Pierce. Objective, extraction. Dimitri's watch beeped once softly. Now, he whispered. The world compressed into a single point of tension. The man near the revolving doors moved first, pulling his jacket aside, hand closing around a pistol grip. The man by the fountain mirrored him. Dimitri drew his own weapon, sleek, black, suppressed. And above them, Kendra Washington released the vent's final latch. The ceiling tile shifted a fraction of an inch. Nobody looked up. Not yet. Kendra's eyes flicked toward the main entrance, where rain streaked down the glass. The storm outside had turned violent, lightning illuminating the skyline like camera flashes capturing evidence for history. For just a second, she thought of Aaliyah and Destiny asleep in their South Side apartment, unaware that their mother was crouched above a kill zone 20 miles away. She whispered their names, a prayer that steadied her better than any weapon could. Below, Dimitri raised his gun toward Jonathan's head. The lobby fell utterly silent except for the whisper of falling rain. Kendra gripped the metal rod tighter. Her body coiled like a compressed spring. 1 second more. She had to wait for the perfect angle. Too soon, and Jonathan would die before she hit the ground. The marble floor beneath Dimitri shimmered with reflections. 6 men and 1 unarmed victim. Then, from the mezzanine, a single drop of condensation fell from the vent and landed squarely on Dimitri's shoulder. He looked up. Their eyes met for the second time that night. Kendra's expression was calm, almost serene. For a brief second, confusion flickered across Dimitri's face. Then realization dawned, the cleaning woman. But by the time the thought fully formed, Kendra was already in motion. The ceiling tile swung open. She dropped through the opening like a shadow severed from heaven, knees bent, weapon ready, descending in perfect silence. The first man turned, mouth opening to shout. Too late. The metal rod cracked against his wrist with surgical precision. His gun skittered across marble like a stone skipping across water. Smoke exploded from the bottle Kendra threw at the ground, clouding the air in a thick chemical haze that smelled of ammonia and burnt plastic. Screams echoed, muffled, distorted, panicked. Somewhere behind the chaos, a voice shouted in Russian. Contact! Mezzanine! Kendra vanished into the smoke like a ghost returning to the shadows. Heart steady, mind sharp, every step deliberate, every strike precise. This was the world she'd been forged for, the one she tried to forget. But this time, she wasn't fighting for a flag or following orders from distant commanders. She was fighting for a promise she'd made to herself. Never again would she stand by while good people died. Below, Dimitri coughed, waving at the smoke, trying to regain visibility. He fired once into the haze, a wild shot. The bullet ricocheted off a marble column with a sharp ping. Somewhere behind him, Jonathan dove for cover behind the concierge's desk. The sound of suppressed gunfire and shattering glass filled the lobby, blending with thunder outside. And through it all, Kendra's silhouette moved like something elemental, unstoppable, unseen, unyielding. When the first wave of smoke began to clear, only fragments of sound remained. Footsteps, groans, the faint drip of water from the decorative fountain. Kendra crouched behind a marble pillar, chest heaving slightly, weapon ready. She could hear Dimitri's voice barking orders through the chaos. Find her. She's military, ranger or special forces. Spread out. He didn't know yet that she was something else entirely, something more dangerous than any soldier he'd faced. A black woman who'd spent 6 years being invisible. A black woman who decided she was done disappearing. Kendra checked her watch. 9:27 p.m. The trap had been sprung. But the real battle was just beginning. She looked toward the stairwell, Jonathan's only possible escape route, then back at Dimitri's silhouette moving through thinning smoke. Her next move would decide everything. She took one steady breath, then whispered to herself, time to finish the setup.